Well, thank you so much for having me here at this remarkable and inspiring conference. I've got a very succinct talk for you, and I've got a little handout to go with it. Hopefully you can all see this handout. Is everyone in sight of one of these? They're all scattered around the room on the tables. There's some upstairs on the balcony as well. Something to take away with you at the end of my talk. What this handout consists in, it just gives you 5, if you like, bullet points of what I'm going to be talking to you about, and then a wonderful diagram which I'm going to dwell on with you at the end. So, number 1, if we're talking about a deep green economy and a paradigm shift in economics, what does that mean? Well, what it doesn't mean is more business as usual. What it doesn't mean is more obsession, for example, as we currently have all around the world, completely mainstream and hegemonic still, with economic growth. And that's why this book, I believe, is quite important, our book From Greenhouse, the Post-Growth Project, available now in all good bookstores and online. What this book is about is trying to explain why we have to end our obsession with economic growth, why we can end that obsession, and how the world will be a better place when we do, how our lives will be better when we are no longer obsessed with chasing after our own tails in the endless quest for more economic growth. And when we actually stop to ask, why did we need to grow the economy anymore anyway? What is it that we need to grow? Isn't there enough to go round? Right? That's the real point about talk about growth. The more you talk about economic growth, the less you need to talk about sharing. Right? And that's what we actually need to do in the world. We just agreed on the goal of a more equal world. Our world, our country, is catastrophically, insanely unequal. If we stop saying, oh, we need more economic growth, and start sharing what we already have, then our lives will be better, the world will be more equal, and we'll stop rupturing the limits to growth as we are currently doing. We are living in this country as if we have 4 planets. Now, when I last looked, we just had 1. And that's what we need to build down towards, acting as if we actually have the 1 planet, which is all that we have. That's what it means in number 1 when I say taking the future seriously and embracing post-growth. What about this phrase, ending the practice of discounting the future? What does that mean? So some of you may be aware, and if you're not aware, let me briefly make you aware, because it's terribly important, that in mainstream economics, they practice what they call discounting. And what that means is that money tomorrow or goods tomorrow, anything tomorrow, is worth less than the same thing today. And over time, that effect goes on and on and on and becomes more and more extreme, such that according to mainstream economics, the amount of stuff that you would need to have 100 years from now in order for it to be worth the same as the same amount of stuff today is several orders of magnitude greater. Well, how is that possible? Well, it's possible if you're going to have endless economic growth, but if you're not, then it isn't possible anymore. We are breaching the limits to growth. We have to end the insane idea that stuff tomorrow is not as good as stuff today. That stuff in 100 years' time isn't as important as stuff today. And of course, if one thinks about this for even half a second, it's obvious how thinking that way, thinking that the future is worth less than the present, is a completely appalling and unacceptable thing to do if we care about our children. And isn't that what we all assume, and I believe rightly so, is the most important thing of all? Our children. You ask any ordinary person, what do you care about most in your life? But everyone says, well, it's about my kids. It's about making a good future for my kids. If you discount the future, you are ensuring a bad future for your kids and for their kids and so on. This is what I mean under the heading of number 2 here. And this is a really, really exciting idea, which I hope you'll take away from this conference. If you take away nothing else from my talk, take this idea away. If you care for your kids, you already care for the deep future. How so? So, the thing that's most important to you, let's say, is your children. So you need to ask yourself the question, if that's what's most important to you, well then what's most important to them? Well, maybe you don't know, maybe you're not sure. What are they going to care about when they grow up? But isn't it a pretty good bet that the most important thing to them is going to be the same thing, i.e. their kids? And what about your grandchildren? What's going to be the most important thing to them? Their kids, and so on ad infinitum. Do Do you get the picture? If you care about your children, for everyone who cares about their children, they must care not just for their own children, but for their children's children, and their children's children, and their children's children's children. It gets a bit of a mouthful. Just the same way, ad infinitum, endlessly. This is a hugely exciting idea. What it means is, everybody who cares most of all about their children, which is what most ordinary people perhaps inside this room, but certainly outside this room, will say, actually already care about the deep future. They just haven't necessarily realized it yet. Because if you care about your children, then you care just as much about the nth generation to come. This is a hugely exciting idea. If we could get people to understand this and to understand that what that means is, if you care about your children, then you must act to safeguard the human race thousands of years and millions of years from now. This could generate, I believe, a revolution in the way that we think. How would we come out thinking if we really, really valued the future and each other? How would we think, how would we act if we took seriously that we are all equal, all of us in the world today and all of us in the future, everyone to come? Point number 3, I put it to you that we would end the obsession with growth and we would substitute what I call a provisioning economy. What is a provisioning economy? A provisioning economy is an economy where what one tries to do is provide what people actually need. Again, it's an alarmingly common sense idea, right? Providing what people actually need as opposed to false wants that are generated for them by advertisers. What a radical idea. It's the most obvious common sense idea as well. If you haven't quite got it yet, what a provisioning economy is, let me give you a little visual prop. This is the provisioning economy. This is a squash grown in my garden, harvested this morning, carried by me, by foot, by bike, by train, all the way from Norwich here to London to show and to share with you. There are about 15 of these on the squash plants in my garden, which is just an ordinary little garden of a terraced house. And I also have a couple of allotments. And I provide for myself and my family quite a significant percentage of the food that we need, the vegetables at least, that we need to subsist during about 2/3 of the year. We provide that directly for ourselves with virtually no involvement in the monetary system, in the standard conventional economic system. The whole economy ought to be oriented towards providing what we need, rather than generating rubbish that we don't need, that we then throw away and destroy the future by means of doing so. Now, this is quite heavy, so I'm going to put it down in a moment. But I'm really, really hopeful that you will take me quite literally when I say that I've come here to share this. I don't want to carry it all the way back with me to Norwich. So someone who lives nearby, I would like to give this to you as a little token of what the provisioning economy means, as also a sharing economy, because frankly I've got too many of these, and they're delicious, but I don't want to carry one all the way home just to have a glut of them. And 4, what goes along with a provisioning economy, a relocalized economy or society, right? A society where local communities have viable economies and are not completely subject to the whims of the global market, of large corporations, etc. Again, an incredibly radical, incredibly obvious, commonsensical idea. The post-growth world, the post-growth society or economy will be one in which we are more self-reliant, in which we trust each other more, in which we know each other better, in which we provide for more of our own needs, in which we have more power over our local ways of living, the conditions of our local life. A post-growth economy, a deep green economy, will be a relocalized economy, and more importantly, a relocalized society. I've been asked to talk today here about the economy and about economics. One of the most important things we need to do, and I talk about this in my own chapter in the Post-Growth Project, one of the most important things we need to do when we think about the economy is, paradoxically, to stop people being too obsessed about the economy, right? Most people in a country like Britain today vote at general elections on the basis of the state of the economy, so-called, whether it's growing or not. They're supposed to think that's a good thing if it is. This is all completely crazy, completely topsy-turvy. We need to put the economy back at the service of society again, right? What is an economy for? An economy is to satisfy our needs and to enable us to survive and to flourish, right? Economy should be at the service of society, and society is fundamentally based in ecology. So, a relocalized economy and a society that has control over its economy rather than vice versa. For us to run our economy rather than the economy to run society. And what this requires us to do is to think and communicate globally, but to act and protect locally. In very concrete terms, a couple of examples of this. We must pull together, colleagues, comrades, friends, we must pull together and stop this incredibly dreadful TTIP treaty, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which some of you will be aware of, and if you're not, please look into it, which is threatening to strip out national democracy and to abolish any kind of powers that local communities have over their own future, and to basically put everything at the whim of large transnational corporations. And another example, a more positive one, the Scottish referendum recently, which would have given Scotland independence, failed, of course. But what the powers that be in Westminster were forced to grant in the course of that referendum campaign was a promise to maximise the amount of devolution they give to Scotland. And this is now leading to calls for more power in England too. There is a huge opportunity here, and the opportunity is right now. And we need to get together, lobby our politicians, become our politicians. That's what I'm trying to do. Why lobby people if you can be the people that get lobbied, is the way I think about it. And we need to ensure that the powers that be, and that means ultimately us, right? That means ultimately us, take back some of the power which is vested in large corporations and vested in Westminster and relocalize it. And that opportunity is there now because of the constitutional debate that is happening right now, will happen during the election and afterwards, about how we can devolve more powers down from Westminster. So that's an exciting possibility. And finally, 5, what does this mean in terms of thinking about economics and the received wisdom, if that's the right word, which it isn't, in economics? What is a deep green economics, and what is it displacing? So the old economics says human desires, which are constructed by advertising companies and large corporations, right, are at the center of everything. You just need to satisfy those, and we'll worry about the earth and pollution and where the raw materials are going to come from later. That picture is completely bankrupt. A deep green economy and a deep green economics is going to be one which recognizes that our economy is nested within our society, and our society is nested within our ecology, and that we absolutely must take that seriously as the conditions of possibility for what we're trying to do and for us to be able to live and flourish together. So, and this is summed up in this wonderful diagram here. This diagram, what's represented in this diagram, represents the future of economics and the future of our world, if it is to have one. So just to briefly talk you through this, what's shown on the outside of the diagram is the limits to growth that we are currently breaching, the limits to the amount we can emit without producing dangerous climate change, and many of the other limits which are often less talked about. So we must stay within those limits to growth if we are not to destroy ourselves, collapse in the way that was gestured at by one of the earlier speakers. But also, and this is what the so-called development movement rightly draws attention to, you can't just focus on the limits to growth. You have to look also at human beings and other creatures and what they need in order to survive and to flourish. And that's what's represented by the inner part of the diagram, the inner circle: food, health, water, income, etc., the social foundations for life. There needs to be enough of those, right, for people to be happy, living well, not rebelling against their rulers, and generally enjoying themselves upon the earth. So what that gives you is this donut shape, this wonderful green donut. Yeah? On the outside of it, the social limits, the ecological limits to growth. On the inside of it, the social foundations for a good life. And within those two things, that donut shape, that's the safe space and the just space for human beings to live. In future, if there is going to be a future, that's where we're going to reside, and that's where economics is going to have to focus. So this is the nature of the paradigm shift that we need, to junk the old picture of more and more growth to satisfy allegedly infinite wants, and to substitute for it inhabitation of this safe and just and good space for humanity to live within the ecological limits to growth. So, friends, colleagues, the odds are, in my view, stacked against us in order to be able to achieve this. But we can achieve it, and we must achieve it for the sake of the future. And I believe that we will achieve it, because we will it. So please join with me. Let's join together. Let's make this happen. Let's will it. Thank you.